All right, once again, my name is Richard Dykman, and what we're going to do for the Q&A here is just start off by having the students introduce themselves, just say a couple things about each one of them, and then I'm going to go ahead and ask the questions that you guys have written down. Some of them I'll answer, some of them Dr. Pinsky will answer, but mainly want the students to give them a chance to talk with y'all and give them their experiences about what it's been like to be here at the Ochsner Clinical School. So why don't we let the students just give a quick blurb about themselves.
This thing. My name is Andrei Pavlov. I did my undergraduate at the University of California, Irvine, dual major in evolutionary biology and medical anthropology. I then did some molecular pharmacology research, worked in an ER before I started here at Ochsner, and am currently the president of the Ochsner Medical Student Association.
My name is Brian Kripe. I did my undergraduate at Michigan State University in journalism and zoology. Then I did some research with great hammerheads and ran a boat in the Bahamas and was a photographer in the South Pacific for a while before I came over here and joined UQ. And I'm our academic officer for the Ochsner Medical Student Association.
My name is Robert Harold. I graduated from the University of New Orleans with a degree in biological sciences and a degree in Spanish language. And I worked at Ochsner here for 2 years before going to Australia. I was a perfusion tech back in surgery, and I was the research rep for the first 2 years over in Australia, but I'm currently focusing a little bit more on studies right now.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Baxter. I got my undergraduate degree up at the University of Wisconsin in biochemistry. Let's see, I didn't really do a whole lot after my degree, and I just went straight into medical school, but I'm friends with these guys, so I'm cool by association, right?
You know, and one of the things I'd like to point out right now is the vast diversity of the students that we have in the program. With some of the applicants that I was speaking with earlier, I was saying how the school attracts people who have an adventuresome spirit. By just doing something like this, you're pretty adventuresome. We attract people from all over the country, and one of the things that I've been really privileged to be a part of is just getting to know the students from all kinds of walks of life. They've had phenomenal experiences doing all sorts of things. So that's the sort of people you guys are going to be hanging around if you join the Ochsner Clinical School. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by just addressing some of the questions that you all have written down. Can you describe the living arrangements in Australia? So I'm going to turn this over to the students and let them just address living conditions, housing, entertainment, that sort of thing.
All right, I'll start off with this one. So a lot of the accommodation in Australia is off campus, so usually you'll find an apartment or a share house or something like that. The university is great with providing resources to do that. Facebook has been great for incoming classes as far as, hi, I'm in this cohort, I'm moving to Australia, I need a roommate, anyone have any advice? We're really great at giving advice as far as areas to live. So for me personally, I lived in a share house with a few other medical students and a few other international students, and that was really cool because I got to meet more students. I lived with people from France, from Germany, from Norway, Sweden, all that sort of stuff, in addition to the people I was with in medical school. So it was a studious environment for me because we were all students, but it was also really fun. And you definitely, Australia's great, Brisbane's great as far as things to do, when you're not inside a classroom or a library and stuff like that. You get tons of wonderful opportunities to travel and to see Australia, which I highly recommend because when else do you get to spend, 2 years in such a beautiful place? So that was my experience as a share house. I know y'all lived in apartments, right? You guys want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, I lived in an apartment both first and second year, and there's really depending on how much money you want to spend, you can live in a really nice place, or you can live in a more student-oriented place, bare bones, but really all you need, your books and a bed. There's so many things to do, so many festivals over there. The public transportation's incredible. Never had a problem getting around or anything like that. No matter where you live, you're able to get to campus in I think the longest commute I ever had was about 15 minutes. And that just gives you enough time to study on the bus and that kind of stuff. A lot of us biked around. that kind of stuff.
Yeah, let's say somebody in my group earlier asked about living on campus and things, and there are dorms there. Australian medical students largely in the, or Australian students largely in the dorms are undergraduates, and so if you don't mind living with undergrads who, I realize, undergraduate probably wasn't that long ago, but when you're studying for medicine and there's a bunch of like 18-year-olds there, it maybe has a little less appeal. But it's very easy to find housing that's very close to campus. My first year, I was about a 5-minute walk from campus. The second year, I was about a 3-minute walk from the hospital I was at. So there's certainly a lot of options, and there's other students and things that you're always able to find places with. I'll certainly second what Rob said as well. The public transportation in Brisbane is very good. Their bus system is very extensive. It's all integrated as well across the whole thing, so you can have like a card that you just swipe to get on the buses. The trains throughout the whole area, you're about a 1-hour train ride from down at the Gold Coast, which has a lot of different like nightclubs and surfing and things like that down in that area. There's also the river winds through the city. Unlike here, where it seems like there's a bit more of a separation between the East Bank and West Bank, there it's kind of spread very equally across them, and so there's a high-speed ferry service that runs you up and down and actually terminates at the campus at one end. So it's a very easy place to get around. It's a very easy place to live. So public transportation makes getting food and things like that not a big problem for students. Also, the doing around activities, climate-wise, it's pretty similar to here, I would say. And very mild winters. It gets warm in the summer. It gets pretty warm in the summer. But in Brisbane itself, it's not overwhelming temperature-wise. So it's a good place to live. It's a very easy place to live and to be very comfortable at.
So my experience might be a little bit different than the average. My first year, I lived by myself in a studio in the city. My second year, my fiance came out to live there as well. She wasn't my fiance at the time; she is now. I'll digress for just 1 second to say that she actually went out there, as Dr. Pinsky had mentioned. The university itself is a great university. She's a mechanical engineer that currently works for NASA, and she did a hypersonic scramjet technology research thesis out there because UQ is the #1 facility on the planet to do so. So that's what she did during my second year, and both times I actually lived quite far away from campus. My personal study style is very different. I really didn't go to lectures at all. They do have the thing is they podcast the lectures. So for the majority of them, you can watch them at home on your own time. And for me, that worked really well. For some people, they needed more structure. They needed to go to lectures, and you have to decide what study style works best for you. So I was actually about a 45, 50-minute commute from the campus the whole time. That said, as Brian mentioned, there's the CityCat, which would go from about 2 minutes walk from my place directly to the campus, and you get free internet while you're on the CityCat. So I would sit with my laptop and do work while I had to go to campus. I also had a bicycle there. You can take your bicycle on the CityCat, and so sometimes I would take that there and then ride my bike back. In most cases, it's pretty easy to find a place. I was always living in a 1-bedroom place because I had my fiance with me, which made it feasible. Otherwise, share houses is usually the way to go. You usually pay about, what would you guys pay, about $500 to $700 a month, something like that?
Let's say, I never lived in a share house because you have a mix of students. I lived with other medical students the whole time. I would say their rent is done, they do it weekly. So initially you might look at places and be like, this is a really nice place, and it says the rent's only like $500. You can't believe that, but it's actually $500 a week. But it's pretty reasonable. I think everywhere I was at, my rent was just a little under $800 a month. I definitely lived places that were, I'd say, fairly reasonable quality. Certainly not the nicest that anybody was in, but also not like where Rob lived. His place was very Spartan. I'll also say that one of our initiatives this past year was we developed a guide for new students who are coming over to Australia. It's close to 40 pages, and it's basically everything from the standpoint of from the point that you've been accepted into the program and you've committed to it, all the way through when you arrive at Australia and are settling into your classes and your rotations and things. And so it kind of takes you through as a timeline when you need to be doing different things. When you get to Australia, what you should be doing to kind of get yourself settled and be able to go and look for a place to live, how to find a place to live, how to deal with like the variances in the rental system and everything else there. So I think that we've had input from all of the cohorts who've gone through so far, and we put this out for the current class. And I think it's the response has been that it's an extremely comprehensive guide. And so essentially all of the questions that we all had when we were going through the process are now answered for new students coming in. So you can kind of go to that as a reference as well and kind of see what it's like and adapting to life in a new country. So.
I have one more thing to add, too. One concern is, well, I don't have anything. You don't have a bed, you don't have a dresser. You know, you basically go over with whatever you can fit on an airplane. So a lot of things, a lot of housing, one advantage of student housing is you can find places that are fully furnished as far as bedroom furniture, living room furniture. So there's that, and that can sometimes be reflected in your rent as well. Like I lived in a share house that was probably rent comparable to Brian's. However, Brian's place was a little bit nicer, but mine was also fully furnished and stuff like that. Really? Okay, well, I lived in the West End, so haha. No, joke's on you. In addition to that, though, another thing is we have a huge presence over there now. So if there are second years leaving to come here for their third year, they already have a great place set up. They may have furniture that they can sell to you. You know, we've got great networking that way as far as, hey, I've got these textbooks. Hey, I have this bed. Hey, I've got this road bike that I can't, you know, get back over here. So in addition to that, like we help each other that way as far as this is a great place to live. We're all leaving. Do any first years want to move here? You know, that sort of thing. So we like to help each other out that way as far as helping with the transition.
Yeah, just to finish up with this topic, Brian mentioned the guidebook, and I mean that thing is phenomenally comprehensive. From what do you do when you step off of the airplane? So it's really a great resource, and these guys here have been trailblazers for all the cohorts who are coming behind them. So y'all will have the benefit of now literally hundreds of students are into and are finishing the program by the time you guys will start. So you'll have that benefit. We had one question about what's the difference between the rotations in years 3 and 4 with this program compared to a U.S. medical school. I'll just address that. Not a whole lot, really. U.S. medical schools have core rotations during their third years in surgery, medicine, peds, OBGYN, mental health. We have those same ones, but mental health is in the 4th year in our program. We've been educating Tulane and LSU medical students in their core rotations here at Ochsner for a long time. So, we are a major training site for LSU and Tulane in their medical school. So, we're used to educating U.S. medical students. Probably the biggest difference is in our program during the 4th year, students go back to Australia to do an elective in an inpatient rotation sort of elective back in Australia, whereas there's no similar requirement, obviously, for U.S. medical students. Any comment you want to make?
Yeah. So, as Richard said, it's the same subject, and order may be a little bit different sometimes, but it's basically covering the same things. In the way, because we're so used to teaching American students from American universities, that's how we teach it here. So I think there is a contrast, at least I've heard from some of the students, in terms of how the clinical schools teach back in Australia versus how we do it here. We're very much more hands-on. The medical student is part of the team, along with the residents and staff doctors, and so that's a plus. I mean, Richard and I are probably, obviously biased because that's how we were trained with that. Just a little clarification too. The rotation back in Australia needs to be an inpatient rotation, and it's one of the required inpatient rotations. I know a lot of the students have done mental health, but I know there's been others as well. If there's any difference in the curriculum at all, and I'm not sure it's a big difference, is there may be a little bit more primary care exposure within the UQ curriculum than the standard U.S. school. Now, some U.S. schools have been oriented very much towards primary care, but in terms of the average standard U.S. school, I think there's probably more primary care and more of a defined exposure, I think, in rural areas than in U.S. schools. And personally, I think that's a real plus.
Okay, the next one, I'm going to turn this on over to the students too, and the question is, explain what happens in each year of the program, year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4, and what do you do, underlined, in each year? So why don't each one of y'all take a year?
You read a lot.
So Andre's going to take year 1.
Yeah, I'm the only year 4, so I'll talk about that.
So in year one is, let's see, well, you go to class, hopefully, unless you're Andre. I like going to lecture. I like learning that way. I like that. So you have a lot of lectures, tutorials, lab work a little bit, you know, anatomy labs and stuff like that, some physiology labs. And you are within that PBL structure that they talked about where you have groups of 10 students. So you have that, your lectures, everything like that. So that's kind of like your basic week is you have those things scheduled. In addition to that, you also begin your clinical training right away. So you're going to, within that PBL group, you split off. So in about a group of 5 students, half your PBL group, you're going to begin your clinical training. And so with that group of 5 people and a physician, you start learning how to take patient histories, you start learning how to do exams. This sort of thing you do more within your group. So you do like hypothetical histories with the people within your group and your physician, and you get coaching on how to ask the questions and how to structure those sorts of things. And it brings a really strong foundation for the rest of your clinical years. So you get a chance to go into the hospital a few times during your first year, but it's a lot more classroom work and getting that basic foundation of your basic science knowledge down pat. So that way when you go into second year and you take it a step further, you have that foundation. A lot of times they say first year is learning how everything is supposed to work. And then second year is learning what happens when it goes wrong, you know, as far as your physiology and everything like that. So I don't know. How did I cover that? Pretty good? Okay. I'll pass it on to Rob, who will talk about second year.
Yeah, so between first year and second year, you're going to be expected to do an elective. So at the end of first year, you'll do an elective. I did mine at one of the UQ clinical schools up in Nambour. I did internal medicine elective. So that's all I'll say about the end of first year. And then beginning of second year. Second year is a lot like first year, but like Caitlin said, you know, you learn how the system works in first year. Second year, you learn how, you know, how it can not work, how it can work improperly. And so a lot of your labs are going to be replaced with, so you'll still have anatomy lab, but you'll also have a pathology lab. And they have wet samples that'll show you like, okay, well, you know, you've seen a heart. This is a heart that has a lot of ischemia in it, that kind of stuff, you know. And you'll have that once a week, and you'll have discussions on different pathologies. You have the same PBL schedule basically twice a week, and your clinical coaching, instead of a lot of times in the first year, it's based in your clinical group, so you're examining each other, you're talking to each other. It's now in patients, so you're either at one of a couple of hospitals. I know, Brian, you did yours at Royal Brisbane. I did mine at the Princess Alexandra Hospital, but you follow around a physician and you see patients. You're expected to do physical exams on them. You're expected to report findings, and they'll even ask you to interpret a little bit. I mean, it's not one of the things that you're being incredibly good at second year, but I mean, they give you the opportunity to show what you can kind of do, what you've been studying. You're expected to do long cases where you go in and see a patient either by yourself or with a couple other students, and you take the history, you do the physical exam, and you come up with a provisional and differential diagnosis and that kind of stuff. And you'll do a few of those in the first semester, and you'll do a few of those in the second semester. This is all to prepare you for the end of second year, where not only you have your science exams, you have an OSCE. And so the OSCE is basically throughout the entire first year, they're going to be first and second year, they're going to be hiring actors. You'll do a video where you take a history from them, and then you'll watch it and you'll get critiqued. You'll do this in second year also, but OSCEs, they hire actors, and you take a history, you do a physical exam, you might do a procedural skill. You'll do a communication exercise where maybe you try to get them to, or assess their level of desire to quit smoking, and you try to help them through that. You know, it's a battery of stations that you go through, and it's part of your assessment to get through the second year. So it's all in preparation for that. That's pretty much all second year. Second year is getting prepared to take the USMLE a lot for us. So I don't know if you want to talk. You probably can talk a little more.
I was going to say, I have to kind of go back a little bit too and fill in the USMLE angle, largely because it is a big part of what we do, and it's a big focus for students. And also, Andre did an excellent job laying a framework for us for a USMLE prep program. I worked a lot last year to try and build that more and make it more robust, and we're kind of continuing that now. And it's always something that comes up as a question, so I don't know if it was amongst the list of things and we're jumping the gun on it. But I'll go ahead. So during first year also, on top of the UQ organized academic activities that Caitlin talked about, we've also started in first year USMLE tutorials, and those are taught by second year UQ UQ Oxner students. The focus in first year is kind of introducing you to the way that you have to think for the exam. So you're familiarized with the exam and the way that you need to kind of critically analyze those kinds of questions. We're not trying to kind of replicate the UQ material. We're just trying to give it to students in a way that shows you kind of how you can take what you're learning through UQ and also apply that for the USMLE and kind of fill in any gaps that exist in that. During second year, we also continue tutorials, and at that point, the tutorials are taught by students who have already taken the USMLE exam. This is organized through UQ. It's open for, specifically put on for our UQ Oxnard students. There's some students, like when Andre goes back for his next rotation, he'll be teaching then, and there's some students who are Americans and Canadians and Australians who are staying there in the traditional 4-year program in Australia, who have taken the USMLE and done extremely well on it, and who are teaching those tutorials. And so at that point, it's really focused on the very USMLE specific knowledge. And those tutorials, there's multiple sessions throughout the week, but it's most students go to, they're kind of the same thing, just in different locations, but it's another 3 hours every week that's focused on that. On top of that, you're studying for UQ, but you're also studying for the USMLE exam. Fortunately, in second year, there is a lot of overlap in the curriculum, so by focusing on the USMLE and kind of filling in additional material, you get a very comprehensive take on what you need to succeed at UQ, as well as do well on the USMLE exam, which is always a concern for people because the curriculum is a little bit different. But as you go through, you really can do both of those quite well, and I think that we have a good support structure in place for that and to encourage students to do well on the USMLE. When you finish the end of your second year, you finish in early November, and then most students take that next 5 or 6 weeks, and that's an intense studying block, whether you do it in Australia or you come back to the States and do it here. During that 6 weeks is probably the hardest that you're ever going to study for anything in your life. And it's going to be 10, 12, 14 hours a day, hitting the USMLE really hard, and so you can take the exam at the end of December and have that done before you start your third-year rotations here. It's daunting to look at, but at that point, too, I mean, the work that you put into it is an enormous payout as far as how you do on the exam. So you kind of have to assume that that second year, I mean, that's what's going on. Your second year doesn't end in November when your UQ classes are done. Your second year ends in December when you finish that USMLE exam. So it's intense, but I mean, U.S. students do the same thing. They take a dedicated study period at the end of their second year, and they study for the USMLE. Going into third year now, I think that coming into third year, having had that very strong clinical background at UQ that Rob and Caitlin talked about, as well as that clinical science and knowledge background that you have to have that you've done working towards the USMLE, you really come in with kind of the best of both worlds. A lot of U.S. students don't have that same clinical exposure that we do when they start third year. So when you get into third year, you're on one of 5 rotations. In the third year, you do medicine, internal medicine, general practice, pediatrics, surgery, or obstetrics, gynecology. And during each of those, some of those you rotate through different areas. For example, like in pediatrics, you spend time in the pediatrics ED, you spend time in the pediatrics intensive care unit, you do some outpatient clinic work, and so you get different exposures. But in all of those, you do have some time each week that's either, you may have some lectures or some PBL type sessions. Internal medicine, we don't have lectures, we just have PBL sessions that are done. But aside from that, though, I mean, you're expected to be at the hospital and you're a contributing part of the treatment teams. You're seeing new patients, you're seeing patients that are admits, you're doing their histories and their physical exams, you're seeing them as they're updating every day through the hospital, you're talking about their care plans with the team. I mean, you really are an integral part of the patient care team. If you're there, you're working hard, you're motivated, I mean, you're to the point that you really are, you're beneficial to your team as well. You're not just somebody who's falling around and they're doubling up on all their work. I mean, they're trusting the examinations that you're doing, your assessment of what the patient looks like. And so you really are, I mean, you're integrated and you're part of your medical treatment for all of these patients. And it's a fantastic learning environment to be in. Everybody's very motivated to teach. They're very willing to teach. They're excited to have us here as students. And so it's been extremely receptive that way. We also have, because of the integrated medical records here that we have as students, you have access into the electronic medical records system. So you're seeing the labs, you're going through, you can write notes that are in there as well. So when your treatment team is going through to discuss things, I mean, you're part of that. It's not like you're just following them around and watching. So I think in that regard, too, it does differ a little bit from what the students have in Australia who go through UQ, because there is more of that watching and observing. But here, you get thrown right into it, but it's an incredible experience. It's busy, you're doing a lot of work, but it's immensely rewarding. I can't recommend it highly enough.
I mean, they've covered pretty much really the bulk of it. You know, I've actually already gone through all of third year. They're just about to finish their first rotation of third year. I won't belabor any specifics, but Brian's spot on. You are a member of the team. They expect you to come in and, you know, if you really show aptitude and you really show some concern, care, and you want to get into it, you can do a lot. I've started central lines on patients. I've closed in surgery. I've delivered babies from start to finish. I mean, these are experiences that will last with me till the day I die. But moving on towards the fourth year kind of aspect of things, it's a little bit less intense. Third year is really intense pretty much most of the way through. You have a highly variable schedule. That was the thing that took me the longest to get used to. In the first 2 years, it's a little bit more regimented. You have your own, you can make your own kind of schedule around that. In third year, sometimes you're stuck. You know, I had an emergency surgery. Well, guess what? You're in emergency surgery. I mean, that's kind of the way it happens. Some days I was done by 11 in the morning. Most days I'm done 4 or 5. I had my longest day ever was starting at 5 in the morning, and I got home at 1 the next morning. So it's very highly variable. Those are unusual days, but they can happen. In fourth year, you get a little bit more opportunity. I'm on a rotation called Medicine and Society right now. It's not clinically intensive. You're not overburdened by the rotation. It's a really excellent opportunity to take advantage of learning about the psychosocial aspects of medicine. That's what I'm doing. I'm working in an underserved clinic here at Bonnabel High School, and I have to deal a lot with the complaints that high school students have when they come into the clinic, and I get to think about how that applies in their home life and barriers to care, things like that. We do go back for a rotation in Australia. There are pros and cons to that, of course, and just as there is with anything. But the pros are you get to go back and, as Dr. Pinsky said, close a bit of a loop. I get the opportunity to make a little bit of extra cash teaching the USMLE, which is never a bad thing, and get to see some friends that I made back there that I haven't seen in a while as well. The rest of it is kind of up to you. You can do a lot of selectives and electives along the way. I'm going to be doing infectious disease and nephrology later because I'm interested in sepsis and critical care. I end my last 2 weeks of med school is in neurosurgery because I picked that because I figured I'm never going to do neurosurgery again. So why not have the exposure? But really a lot of the focus is kind of more personal and professional development, a little bit of delving into things that you found more interesting in third year so you can go deeper into it, and preparing for your residency applications, which I am constantly reminding myself are due September of this year. And going along and getting all that taken care of. Letters of rec. I think one thing that Brian didn't explicitly mention is that third year is the time to start cultivating letters of recommendation. Those are important parts of your applications. It's a good time to stand out. Show that you want to learn. You know, the reality is everybody here knows we're med students. We don't know anything compared to most people here. And nobody expects you to know everything, but they expect you to want to learn, and they expect you to want to be taught. And if you are, then you're golden, and it's a really amazing experience. I've had a great experience here. I'll just close by saying that I have friends in other medical schools in this country, and I have spent quite a lot of time doing compare and contrasts with them, basically saying, hey, am I getting shortchanged here somehow? And consistently the answer has been no. I've been talking with some friends, and they're like, wow, you actually got to do that on your surgery rotation or on this rotation? They wouldn't even let me come near that. So you get the opportunity to really push the limits of what your aptitude is, and they'll definitely give you an environment to do that here.
Just moving on, we had a few questions relating to residencies, you know, how your candidacy would affect the residency here at Ochsner, as well as what the whole process is. And I'll speak to that because I'm real involved in that. I'm also involved in GME in that, you know, I'm one of the core faculty members for our internal medicine residency program. I sit on the admissions committee for that. I'm real involved in making sure the students are on track to get their letters of recommendations, to get their dean's letter, taking the Step 1 and Step 2 exams, putting out study preparation plans. You know, I work with the student government a lot. I work with Brian and Andre a lot about this. So, you know, we will really kind of help you guys and walk you through the whole process. Now it's up to you guys to do well in step 1 and step 2 exams, do well in school. If you're going to get involved in research, finish up research projects and that type of thing. So, but you will have definitely support in getting, to the door. We're involved with lots of academic programs around the country. We know a lot of people, and we've done special things to get interviews for our students at different programs where they might have wanted to get an interview, but otherwise, there was a problem because they're a foreign medical graduate. So we've been able to open up a lot of doors for our students in that regard. All of the students who wanted an interview here at Ochsner for our first class got an interview at Ochsner. One of the purposes of our program here is to fill our residency programs with fantastic residents. And, our students are on campus here for 2 years. We get an opportunity to really look at these students and say, hey, this looks like a really great student. This would be a fantastic person to have in our residency program. So, we're viewing this as an opportunity on the residency side of things to actually really improve the quality of the residency programs. So, yeah, if you shine a lot as a student here, that's going to be fantastic for Ochsner, and we're going to want you as one of our residents in our residency programs. We have a question here about describe the Aboriginal health experience. We'll let one of y'all take that one on.
The Aboriginal health experience is something that it was a portion of our elective requirement during the first couple of years to have an Aboriginal health experience or rural medicine in Australia. Rural medicine in Australia is a little bit different than it is here. Because here I don't think there's anywhere that's rural to the same extent that it is there. There's some areas that are very isolated, very small towns. One of the things in Queensland is they have the Royal Flying Doctors Service, which is that they actually fly out to some of these small towns to do clinics and things, or it's essentially a flying ambulance because the large urban centers are relatively far apart from each other. Most of the population in the country is on the coast. And so for these small centers, medical care is a little bit different. There's large Aboriginal populations in many of these areas, but it's also that the general practice there, they do a lot more than a lot of kind of like family practice doctors here in the U.S. would do. They perform some minor procedures on patients. They do a lot of the obstetrics and gynecology and things like that that would otherwise be done here frequently by specialists. So it's a little bit different practice area. So they want people to have exposure for that. Australian students will go and spend 8 weeks in one of their rotations in one of these more rural settings. For us, in our first year, we went and had a lecture series and spent some time out on Stradbroke Island, which is off the coast of Brisbane, and has a large Aboriginal population. It was really focused on the unique Aboriginal health issues and how those played into their health care. My understanding is that going forward, actually I know this past year, they've integrated Aboriginal health into the curriculum for all of the UQ students in first year. Dr. Marie Toombs, who's a fantastic instructor, she's Aboriginal and really did a wonderful job with our program, is now kind of bringing that same content to all of the first year students. My understanding now is that the elective that you do at the end of first year, there doesn't have to be an Aboriginal portion to that, but you still have to do an elective experience within a clinical setting in Australia. But they've really kind of integrated that content into the course itself. And because it's an interesting area of medicine, it's been kind of historically rather neglected in Australia. Their recent history as far as Aboriginal issues is it's much more prevalent, much more recent than many of the similar things that we've gone through in the U.S. with some minority groups and health issues here. But it's a fantastic exposure to have and understanding the unique dynamics that exist in that situation. And I think having that kind of teaching and that kind of exposure to the situations benefits us here when we're dealing with patients who have different backgrounds and different experiences and different exposures, because you're really learning the techniques for how to talk to patients in those situations and how to communicate with them and how to kind of deliver the understanding they need and the health care that they need in the best possible way.
Let's see, we have a question similar to the elective question. One of the applicants had a question regarding the requirement to do the elective after your first year and whether or not you can choose between taking that elective and the elective during your fourth year. Those are both required components. So you'll be doing the elective after your first year, and you'll also be doing an elective back in Australia that's an 8-week elective that has to be an inpatient rotation during your fourth year. And then how many classes are there so far that have gone through the program? We have, our first class has just graduated, so we've had 4 classes who have matriculated in the program so far.
and I'm going to steal a question that you have, that I know you have, because I want to answer it. There was a question that somebody submitted asking if koala bears are dangerous. So first of all, koalas are not bears, right? They're marsupials. Lesson number one. Number two, most of us on the faculty end from Oxnard, I can't speak for the students, they have to speak for themselves, quickly found when we went over there to visit that there's this park, this koala reserve, that is a fun place to go. You take the boat ride up the river to the reserve, and they have koalas there, and kangaroos and wallabies, and lots of strange-looking birds and things, as I recall. But the required souvenir picture that my wife and I each have is holding a koala. And they very nicely hold on to you by those long claws that they latch into your, hopefully your shirt and not your skin.
I would like to brag that I saw a koala out in the wild. I did not pick it off the tree and hold it, but I was very proud. I was very proud of spotting a koala in the wild, because you always see like the signs along the road, like you're used to the Australian kangaroo one, but you see ones for koalas, and I'm like, yeah, right, where's a koala? Show me a koala. And down in Melbourne, I actually saw a bunch, like a whole bunch of koalas in real trees, and so I had that experience. But I did go to the sanctuary. I didn't get the picture. They're actually showing a really big snake, and I'm terrified, so I went away from the whole picture area.
So when you drive around roads in the United States, you see signs that say, deer crossings or beware deers or something like that. In Australia, it's, kangaroo areas, koala areas, all those sorts of things. And I'll just tell one just quick story. David Wilkinson, who's the dean of the school, head of the school, I was going home with him one night for dinner, so we left his office, and he lives out in one of the suburbs, and he said, on the way home we have to stop at the vet. He had a young puppy, has a Rhodesian Ridgeback, and he said, I've got to pick up the special puppy food that the vet has. And so I thought, I'm going to go in with you, because I've got dogs, and I'm curious, what a vet's office and, hospital looks like in Australia. So we walk in, and pretty much, there's a counter where you check in, and vet technicians and all the stuff they're selling at high prices around the place, and looks pretty similar. And then all of a sudden, this couple came rushing in, carrying this blanket with obviously their pet inside this blanket. And I'm thinking, oh God, somebody's cat got run over, or a dog had a problem. And they put it up on the counter, and I'm looking over, and they're unwrapping this, and it was a wallaby. And it was their pet wallaby that had a problem that they were bringing in. So it's just another interesting thing.
Yeah, I should add, Brisbane is a place, it's a very easy city to live in, and aside from people speaking in funny accents and driving on the wrong side of the road, otherwise it could generally be in a lot of cities in the U.S. It's very easy to settle in and be very comfortable in, and kind of not even, after you've settled there a little bit, not even really realize that you're in a completely different country. But then you'll have experiences like I've had several times, been out like cycling down the road, and you'll look over and there's a bunch of kangaroos jumping down the road next to you. Or like you can go camping places and there's wallabies coming into your camp and trying to steal your food and things like that. So it really is, it's kind of a magical place in a lot of ways. It's a lot of fun.
Didn't a dingo actually almost eat a baby when you were camping?
Oh, actually, yeah. While I was on Fraser Island, there's an island off the coast of Australia, just a little bit north from Brisbane, about 2 hours north, called Fraser Island. It's this enormous sand dune island. And it's actually the only place in the country that they still have genetically pure dingoes. As elsewhere, they've bred with dogs and things. But the only way you get there is with a ferry. And so I'd gone up there with friends for a few days. And actually, yeah, while we were there, a dingo did actually try to steal a baby. So it was okay. The baby was fine. People interceded on its behalf. But so the stereotypes are true to some extent.
There will be, you guys will have many unusual and lifetime experiences by going there, and I'm sure all the students here have. Now, I want to give each of the students a chance to make maybe one last comment. Andre?
I'll probably just touch on a couple of things that kind of stuck out to me. One thing I noted was the discussion about the MD versus MBBS thing, and the reality is that I really don't think it matters much. I got very interested in that and really kind of delved down into it, and there are some curriculum changes. It does technically, they call it professional level 9 versus 8 in Australia. That's the classification system they use for it. But the reality is, if you get an MD from Australia, you're going to go through the ECFMG, and you're going to have an MD when you get here. If you get an MBBS, you're going to go through the ECFMG, and you're going to have an MD when you get here. It's not something that I would be concerned about in the slightest. Overall, though, in terms of the program, I found that one of the unique strengths that I got out of this program, and as I said, I compared with some of my colleagues in other med schools here in this country, is the degree of flexibility that you get in this program. There are obviously a lot of stringent requirements. We do have to, have a minimum knowledge base and skill set in order to be physicians. But more so than a lot of my colleagues, we get a lot of flexibility to go the direction we want to go. Some people are really interested in just going out and being a really competent community physician, and they're not interested in academics, they're not interested in research. That's perfectly fine. You can become very competent doing that. I have a more academic slant, and if you look for the opportunities, they become presented to you. I had one of my attendings in internal medicine say, hey, can you help write a paper on diastolic heart failure? And I did, and now it's in review, and it'll hopefully be published in the Journal of Clinical Pathways. I had another attending on pediatrics say, hey, I'm really busy, and you seem like a smart guy. Can you help me do a peer review? And I said, I've never done one before, but sure. And so I did, and he said it was great, wants to use it, give me credit, and now he's giving me more peer reviews to do, and I might do more reviews regularly for the Ochsner Journal. That's because it's my interest. I pursued it. I made it clear that's what I wanted to do, and there is that flexibility to do so. Any specialty is represented here well, anything that you want to do, but the key is that it's also a bit of a double-edged sword, because you also have the freedom to kind of slack a lot and shirk a lot of your duties and kind of get away with it if you really try. And that is a big disservice to you and to your future patients and to everyone that you work with. You won't get hassled a lot. If you're on service here and you really want to duck out, you might be able to get away with it a fair bit, and no one's really going to, be the school marm and slap your wrists over it, but they'll notice, and they'll talk about it, and it will get around. But if you show the interest, the sky's the limit in what you get to do and how you get to do it. And that goes for your phase 1, your preclinical years as well. You have a lot of opportunity to not study for the USMLE. You have a lot of opportunity to try and cram for your exams, and I would really, really not recommend that. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And if you're looking at the USMLE, I know that's a big thing. It's a question I field a lot from a lot of internet sources. You need to spend the 2 years kind of thinking about it and getting ready for it, because the best possible thing you can do to do well in the USMLE is just start out, work your way up to it, and take it before you start your clinical rotations. And you'll do just fine. You'll do great.
I would say that, many of us were in a similar situation to all of you before we started the program, which is that it's a little bit, it's a relatively new program for us. For our class, we would have been the third class to go through. So it was relatively new. There were a lot of questions about it. What was in place for the students? How were things going to work out? And then also, looking at things like the entire shift from being in Australia to being here. And so I know myself and many of my classmates, we spent a lot of time researching it. I also talked to a lot of physicians that I knew. As I said, I'd been based in Michigan previously, and I'd lived in Florida. And I talked to physicians I knew in both areas and some other places around the country. And everyone I talked to, when I brought up the program and explained what it was to them, and they went and did some research on their own, all of them, one of the first things that they said is, well, you're spending 2 years at Ochsner. That's an amazing experience. And I think it is. From the time that we've been here, the limited time so far, this is a huge advantage for students. As Dr. Pinsky had said previously, you're looking at one of the top 15 clinical teaching schools in the country, and you get to spend a full 2 years here. Very few students get that kind of opportunity. On top of that, the differences between Australian medical education and the U.S. medical education, I feel like has been an advantage in a lot of ways. We've had that very strong clinical background. You have to be very self-motivated. There's a certain type of student who kind of self-selects for this and who is going to succeed doing this. But medicine itself, you need to be a very self-motivated person, because as far as you want to go, as much work as you want to put in, the sky's the limit in what you can do. You can get involved in groundbreaking research. You can be involved in an enormous number of avenues while you're here, and you have a great number of opportunities. I don't think that there's been any times that I've regretted being in the program. I haven't regretted the decision that I made to go there. In fact, I've been extremely happy with it. I think that it's been really a great place to go. It's been a great place to learn medicine and kind of have that exposure and that unique experience. Also, since we're at a time that healthcare in the U.S. is undergoing a lot of changes, a lot of the discussions that we have here have revolved around the changes that have gone on at the hospital and the way you provide care with the Medicare changes and everything that's happening in the U.S. And having that exposure to a different system in Australia, because they have a mixed like public-private system there, but the majority of healthcare is under the public system, which is what we have at UQ. You kind of see the different ways that that's handled and the ways that that affects treatment. And so as we're kind of going through with the changes here, it's interesting insight to have. And it kind of lends a new perspective to the way that healthcare is administered also, which I think is beneficial to students in a lot of ways.
I'll build a little bit on what Brian and Andre said. Yeah, this program, it's going to be what you make of it, you know. I had a kind of a special situation. It was easy for me to choose to do the program because I was raised around here. You know, I grew up in Slidell, lived in New Orleans. My mother worked at Ochsner, and I worked at Ochsner for a couple of years. So I knew the quality of care here. I knew the quality of the health system. And I was researching, like Brian said, more of a global health type of education. And when I found out about the program, it was an easy decision. You know, 2 years in Australia and then come back and be guaranteed to have my clinical education at Ochsner it's an incredible opportunity. It's nice to see that a bunch of y'all are from around here because, frankly, we're underrepresented. There's only a few of us from around this area, and so y'all should know better than anybody, you know, what kind of school you're getting into. You know, it's a really unique opportunity. So just take full advantage of it. That's about the best advice I can give right there. You know.
One thing I'd like to communicate to you guys is I grew up in a very small town in Wisconsin. I'm very community-oriented, used to having support from, you know, a great amount of people. And then I went to a large institution for undergrad at UW-Madison, and I felt like I was one of a bunch. You know, you come in, you do your duty, they graduate you, see you later. So coming here, I was kind of used to that sort of thing with that education, and it's not been like that at all. It's been amazing here, and I have found it just being wonderful and having so much support from the people sitting all the way down this table, between the students, between the faculty. I mean, the heads of the programs care. They care about this program. They're just as invested as you are. They want your input. They want your feedback. They want to help you. They'll make those phone calls. I don't feel like I would have gotten that at another institution and in another program, and I'm really grateful for it. So I wasn't expecting it, you know, I didn't really know what I was getting into, and have just found it to be so rewarding, and I'm so glad I'm part of it. And I really like New Orleans.
Okay, thanks. Well, once again, I want to thank you all for coming. Enjoy the rest of your stay in New Orleans.